all of a sudden realized that I didn't even know what I was looking for, and I didn't even know how the pen itself even works, or like what it even really is. Like, it was just kind of like this moment of like, what am I even doing? Like, what is this? What is this thing that I have? I know that I hit it, and I know something's wrong with it. I don't know. And so I started questioning everything, and I don't know what it is, and that's the part where I started to freak out, because I didn't know what it was that I was looking at. And I'm like, oh shit, if I don't know what this is, then like what, well, I don't know what anything is. And that became true, because then I started to think, I'm like, I saw my TV or whatever. I don't even know what I was looking at, but I couldn't recognize anything in my room, or what they were for, like what the objects, like what their uses were for. I'm like, oh god, like what the fuck is this? What's going on? Like, who am I? And that's that when I just, like, it was just like just a general, not even like a who am I, a deep question, just a random, like, oh, like, who even am I? And as soon as I got to that question, everything just kind of broke apart, because I realized I didn't know who I was.
The following video does not glorify drug use, but instead it intends to promote harm reduction by discouraging the ignorant use of specific drugs, as well as harm elimination by discouraging certain people from using specific drugs altogether. There is no right or wrong way to consume these substances, but there are unsafe and safer ways, and what's more comfortable for one person may be more dangerous for another. Before watching this video, please understand that psychedelic experiences may not be entirely predictable, but that doesn't mean that bad trips and good trips are random. Rather, it means psychedelic experiences are influenced by factors such as the individual's given setting, and dosage at that specific point in their life. Therefore, you will not experience what these people have experienced, but you could potentially experience something similar. However, these are random people, so please do not make decisions based on what they say without your own due diligence. And also, take note, once again, that these substances affect everyone differently, especially those with pre-existing mental conditions.
Around that time, I got into a band called Spangle, or I guess they're electronic. It's like one guy who like features a whole bunch of different people on his stuff, but it's pretty psychedelic electronic music. Probably the closest you can get to like the psychedelic experience, like audio wise. It's pretty cool. But they sampled a guy, I'm sure you know, named Terrence McKenna, and he in one of the songs he talks about a DMT trip, and the sample they used was him talking about the machine elves and how they were giving him gifts that they were making with their language and all this stuff. And I was like, what the fuck is this guy on about? Like, who is this guy? I had to look up where that sample came from, and then obviously that got me interested in Terrence McKenna. I found out what DMT was, and from then on, I'd been really interested in DMT. I just nobody had really had it, or the people that did have it were people I didn't know very well, so I didn't like trust getting it from them. But it always just been kind of something that I had thought about and wanted to try, but never really, like, I guess, pursued or purchased or anything like that. And then January of this year, my friend had a DMT cart, and he wanted me to try it, and I was like, I obliged. I'm like, all right. I mean, it's been a while since I'd done any psychedelics. I'd been kind of turned off to them. Had gone through a whole bunch of different stuff in my life, including like quitting drinking, getting sober from alcohol, and so I just, like, I don't know, it was just not something that I would like expected to myself to do ever again. And so when that popped up, I was like, okay, well, and then it's only, and he tells me it's only 15 minutes or so. I'm like, that's perfect. Like, I can try it. If I don't like it, I'm not stuck in it for a whole day. So I tried it, and the best way to explain what it felt like, it was like doing whippets combined with acid. It was like that feeling of like the whomping in the ears, and the feeling of like pressure combined with like, yeah, like the visuals were very LSD like, just the things waving and moving. My buddy's curtains were moving in a really weird way that I had never like seen them move before. We had Spotify up on the television screen, and like there was like the album cover of whatever we were listening to was in the bottom left. But for me, it was bouncing across the screen like those standby screens on like a DVD player. The logo just going back and forth and bouncing on the corners of the screen. And to the point where I actually like looked at my buddy. I'm like, wait, is it actually doing that, or am I just seeing that? And then like was absolutely blown away that I was seeing that happen, but my mindset was so sober. I don't know how to really explain that. Like, I didn't feel high, but I was seeing things that said otherwise. And I kinda did that over and over again. I didn't do anything substantial. I just kinda throughout the course of the night would just go back for another hit and just like, "Wow, this is interesting," and kinda giggled about it, and ended up, uh, buying my own cart from him. He had a source, and, but he trusted, I trusted, obviously, and I got it, and I brought it home, and I wanted to see because I obviously knew that I wasn't getting to the machine elves type thing or the other stuff that I'd read about, stuff that Terrence McKenna was talking about. I knew that I was not doing anything. I wasn't doing these breakthrough doses that were talked about. So I did a little more research on that, on like how to do that or what that's like type thing, and kind of was like, all right, yep, I got this cart here. I'm gonna need to hit this cart 3 times or so. So I'm sitting right here, like, my dining or my coffee table's, like, right over there, and, like, like, 20 minutes or so, I'd, like, do one of these, like, I'd look back at it and just, like, to remind myself it was there, and then I was like, "Finally, fuck it," like, I gotta just, like, get up and try it, but it was also I also knew that it was something that I needed to respect and something that I needed to, like, really, make sure that I wasn't, that I was ready for, I guess. Um, so which is really funny looking back on it now because there's absolutely nothing that can be done to prepare you for that. I think it's easier to prepare someone for, like, an LSD trip or a shrooms trip than it is a DMT trip because you start losing words once it comes to, like, that full DMT realm. Like, that's where, like, psychedelic words don't even work for that. Um, but yeah, I had it sitting there. I watched the Spirit Molecule documentary on YouTube, and really just kind of did a lot of research, or pretty much as much as I could for a good couple hour or so. Um, and then I was like, all right, fuck it, it's time to do it. And I turned my lights down. I made everything uh nice and cozy, and I put on some, like, Tibetan meditation music. Um, I didn't want anything too intricate or crazy, so I just wanted something kinda droney, to set the mood. I didn't want it to influence the trip as too much, you know what I mean? Um, so oh yeah, and I did the thing too. I did this thing where I rolled it in my hands a bit to, like, kind of warm it up and, like, break up the crystals in the cartridge. And I did that for a while. I had my eyes closed and I, like, meditated and kind of just breathed, did some breathing exercises, and finally I was like, all right, it's time to do it. Like, I was still scared, but I knew that fear wasn't gonna wear off. Like, that fear was just always gonna be there. Somebody had described it as like being scared of a roller coaster. It's kind of like you're always going to be scared of the roller coaster until you're, like, on it, and then you're like, oh, I'm having a good time. Then you get off it, and you're like, whoa, that was awesome. I'm like, all right, cool. If it's like that, I'm gonna approach it like that. So I did the whole thing. I took the first big hit, and I had it on the pen. It's got a button that it's got a light on it. I feel like I'm explaining a pen to people who probably know what a pen is. um, the uh, the light goes out obviously after a while, or it blinks after the thing overheats or you've taken too long of a hit. So I just thought, all right, I'm gonna do that until the thing blinks. So did that, held it in as long as I could until I felt like I was gonna pass out, and then I blew it out. Got that weird whippet feeling, the warping noises, the pressure in my head, and then, like, the tinnitus ringing, like that, the really high pitched tone in my ears was super strong. But I also noticed it was doing a weird thing too, where it was like going up in pitch on one ear and going down on pitch on the other ear, and then it would come back, and it was like two different wavelengths, but then they were, like, trying to sync up, and then they finally, as soon as they, like, synced up, it was just like this really high pitch, just like uh tone. And then I looked around the room, saw the crazy visuals that I, yada yada. And I was like, all right, cool. Second hit. Took the second one in, and the same thing. It blinked. I remember also like looking down at the pen itself, and like it looked. Well, the best way to explain it, it looked like a piece of technology out of Dune. Like it looked like really ancient but futuristic at the same time. A type of like holy piece of equipment almost. It was really interesting. I'm like, huh. And I held in that hit, and I remember holding in the hit, and I'm thinking about this pen and thinking about how weird it looks, and I'm holding in, and then holy shit, I'm like, oh my god, I didn't even exhale this hit. I exhaled, and I'm like, holy shit, I've been holding this in for like 2-3 minutes. Like, how is that even possible? What the fuck? Like that's wild. And then I'm like, okay, I only did 2 hits. I got to do that third one. And at this point, I'm fully feeling like I'm tripping. Yeah, it kind of started to feel like I was having like a million thoughts at once. Like it was like I was trying to pick out the specific thought path that I was focused on, but then like all these questions, like what are you, what is life, what, like all of that, just like it was all at once. All of these, just every broad question that can be asked was being like asked in my head at once. And I like was realizing I was like, I'm getting distracted from this process of taking the third hit, and so I like kept trying to do it, and the button would blink. Like it felt like the button like would blink immediately after I would take a pull. Like I wasn't able to get that third hit. I thought the pen was maybe dead or overheating. So I took another one, and it blinked again. And I'm like, what the fuck? So I unscrew the cart from the pen, and I'm trying as best as I can to like see what's wrong with the cart and see what's wrong with like the pen, if there's some kind of obstruction, just any. I don't even really know what my thought process was. I was just looking for something wrong. But at this point, like my visuals were so overwhelming, like my fingers were breaking off into little tiny fingers, and like the pen was becoming part of my hand and was melting into me, and I just all of a sudden realized that I didn't even know what I was looking for, and I didn't even know how the pen itself even works, or like what it even really is. Like it was just kind of like this moment of like, what am I even doing? Like what is this? What is this thing that I have? I know that I hit it, and I know something's wrong with it. I don't know. And so I started questioning everything, and I don't know what it is. And that's the part where I started to freak out, because I didn't know what it was that I was looking at. And I'm like, oh shit, if I don't know what this is, then like what, well, I don't know what anything is. And that became true, because then I started to think, I'm like, I saw my TV or whatever. I don't even know what I was looking at, but I couldn't recognize anything in my room or what they were for, like what the objects is, like what their uses were for. I'm like, oh god, like what the fuck is this? What's going on? Like who am I? And that's that when I just like, it was just like just a general, not even like a who am I, a deep question, just a random like, oh, like, who even am I? And as soon as I got to that question, everything just kind of broke apart, because I realized I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I was. I thought that maybe I was DMT. I knew that I had done DMT. That was like the only thing that I could like process, and I thought that I was DMT. And I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what anything was. I didn't know what being a human was. Any of that. It was just this utter state of like being lost, alone, and confused. Like I said, this is hard to verbalize. Um, but yeah, and so I'm basically like having these thought loops over and over again of like, what am I? Who am I? What is existence? I had this thought of like walls, and I'm like, walls are so funny. Like, what's the whole thing with the walls? We have like infinite space, and so we make walls to pretend that we have a finite space. And what a weird concept that I created. Wait a minute, like, wait, I created that concept? Like, I didn't create the concept of walls. Wait, I did make the concept of walls. I made the concept of everything. I created everything, and then it like it just like felt like I kept going deeper and deeper into realizations, until it came to the point where I was just like, oh shit, I am the only thing that's ever existed. I've created everything from the beginning of time to the end of time. There actually is no beginning of time or end of time. Time is a loop, it's infinite, eternal. Consciousness is eternal. Um, and I came to the conclusion that like it's like I'm like, cause I couldn't picture or visualize anybody or myself or what being human being was really, kind of thing. It got to the point where I had just came to the conclusion that I had been this alone consciousness for eternity, and I created everything around me, and the concept of being a human, everything that exists, I created it because I was bored and alone, and I wanted to pretend like I wasn't. And I started to like panic. Um, I I don't think I like. I mean, obviously, I don't know for sure because nobody was watching me. But I don't think I was like physically panicking. I don't think I was saying anything. I think I was honestly just sitting still like this, upright. But my head was like, I was panicking, like absolutely just scared because I felt like I had known too much. I felt like I had figured something out that I wasn't supposed to figure out, and now my life would never be the same, and I would never be able to function in this realm normally ever again because I now know that it's all an illusion. And then I convinced myself that because I was thinking this way, that I was now schizophrenic. This must be what schizophrenic people think. I'm going to be institutionalized. My friends, my family, my coworkers are all gonna think I'm crazy, and I'm never gonna be able to function in society again. I thought that I had actually I was convinced of two things: that I had either killed myself somehow, the DMT was bad, or I had done a lethal amount of DMT somehow, which is not really possible. Um, and then the other conclusion was that I had just made myself crazy. I just damaged my brain, and I was gonna be crazy forever because I knew too much. And I don't know. I was scared that because of this knowledge I gained, I would never be able to enjoy life because everyone was just a fragment of myself. And yeah, this just that loop just kind of went over and over again. And if there were any visuals during this point, I don't remember them. They were nothing. If there were visuals, they were not memorable compared to the things that were going on in my head, like the thoughts I was having. And after a while of sitting there, I mean, I felt like it had been an eternity. I thought it had been years. I mean, when I that feeling of coming out of the trip is like waking up from a dream. It's like the best way to explain it is like you woke up from a dream that you know didn't last all night, but it felt like it lasted all night, and you can only remember like bits and pieces and fragments of it. It was like it was like I had just woken up from a dream, and I realized, okay, yeah, I did DMT, whatever, but I'm like, that was a fucking long ass trip. Like, realistically, that had to have been like hours. I mean, it felt like eternity, but it had to have just been really hours. And then I looked down, and it was into like track 4 on this playlist that I had been playing of meditation music. It literally had been 12 minutes, maybe a little less. And that hit me like a ton of fucking bricks. Like, that hit me like a freight train. I was just like, holy shit. That like took my entire concept of time and the way we perceive it and flipped it on itself. And even now, like even like I'm not on DMT now, but even after the trip, like my perception of time is different. Not in the sense that I think things go faster or slower than they normally do, but I I know in the back of my head that time is an illusion created by our brains and memories. The only reason we perceive time is because of our memories. And so like dogs have short-term memories or whatever, so like you leave a dog at home and you go to work and you come back 6 hours later, the dog thinks you've been gone forever. Like, to that dog it's been a lifetime. And that's just because they only have that short-term memory. I don't know the exact number, but their memory only goes back um, a certain amount of minutes. So it's like things like that. Like, we perceive time only just because of how we perceive memories, and then obviously we can do things like match up the sun and the moon and all that, and then now we have, okay, 60, we can define what a second is, and then define 60 seconds as a minute and all that shit. But that's just it's still just an illusion. We're just able to tangibly put numbers on that illusion. And that concept didn't really, I guess, make sense to me until after the DMT trip, until like I had that, things like, space time, like just those concepts were totally foreign to me. I just couldn't wrap my head around them. And now, like, really interested in quantum physics and things like that, because I can actually like focus on the video and like it makes sense to me, and like I can conceptualize these things that are intangible to like the normal human brain. I feel like that came off cocky. I'm not saying that I don't have a normal human brain. But yeah, and then so like basically after the time dilation thing and I realized and that whole concept of time kicked my ass, I got up and I just kind of like started walking around my apartment and like picking up stuff, like just trying to remind myself that I was back in this reality, in this dimension, whatever this existence is, I was back. I was able to go around, I was like able to like pick things up and like be like, okay, I can feel this. It was like I was grounding myself basically. I didn't know that's what I was doing until I read about it afterwards, but I was actually grounding myself. I was getting up, picking things up and feeling them, touching them, observing them, realizing what they did and what their purpose was, and remembering that and being comfortable with the fact that, okay, I'm actually a human being again. I'm back in this body, in this reality. I went into the bathroom and I put my hand underneath the sink because oh yeah, I had to pee really bad afterwards. I don't know what happened during that, but after I came out, I was like, I am gonna piss myself. So I went to the bathroom, and when I was washing my hands, I just kind of put my hand underneath the sink and let it run on my hand, and it was like I was feeling all of the senses, like all five senses, simultaneously, but also individually. Like I was able to pick them out and focus on them specifically, like I was able to feel the way the water was warm and how it was running over my hand and just focus on that without actually like seeing it. And then then I was able to like listen to the sound of the water, and then I was able to see it and see what it was doing on my hand. And um I don't know, I just had this weird feeling that like I needed to hold on to reality by doing things like this because it could break apart at any moment. Like I just realized how fragile this dimension really is and how easy it is to break out of it. And I wanted to stay here, and I was scared that I would somehow break out of that reality again and not be able to come back. And so I don't know, I got off, I got on a computer and just kind of started looking up some of the different concepts that I had been dealing with during that trip, like the whole one consciousness thing about, oh, I'm the only person that exists. So I did some like Google term, like search terms of stuff like that. Ended up finding people who had very, very similar experiences to me. It was actually kind of jarring to be like, oh my God, this isn't the only, like, I'm not the only person who's thought like this or had an experience like this. And then it got even more crazy when I started to realize that some of these things that I was thinking about are like the strongest tenets in like Buddhist and Hindu philosophies. Like the oldest religions, oldest documented religions have been saying the things that I was thinking during this trip, concepts that I never grasped up until that point. And I was like absolutely blown away. I felt like, okay, maybe there was some truth to what I experienced, or there has to be. And the only thing that was negative, I guess the only thing that is bad about it is like I had this experience. A lot of people who had the same experience as me didn't have a negative outlook on it. Like I had this feeling of boredom and loneliness, and that's why the only reason this reality exists is to pretend that I'm not just alone, or I'm not just one consciousness. Like instead of that being like an enlightening and peaceful, we are all one type feeling, it was more of like a fuck, I'm alone and trapped forever. And I don't that's now my goal. That's been my process now, is to try to reframe that way of thinking and not think of it as such a dreadful thing. Because I'm now, I mean, I have no question now after that experience that consciousness exists beyond this realm, beyond the human experience, beyond even just this dimension. I'm like, there's nothing that can convince me otherwise. I also know that space and time are illusions. The concept of infinity, like, I've never obviously, we know what infinity is, I know what infinity means, but I never actually grasped that concept until I had that experience with DMT. Now, like, I can go back and kind of remember how that felt, and I can understand that, and it scares the shit out of me. Like, it really does.
You're still struggling to some. How long ago was that again? Exactly that
This was
experience.
this was, like, the beginning of January, like,
Beginning
a
of
little bit
January.
after New Year's.
Have you? I know you've said you've still been like I guess trying to reframe that perspective in your mind. Have you had any like progress since then or at all?
Yeah, for sure, but I've also kind of realized that it's not a necessarily linear path, because there are some days where I'm comfortable and okay with the concept of eternity and oneness, and then there are other days or other times where the thought is extremely daunting to me, and I end up going into, like, a mini existential crisis about it. So I don't think it's necessarily something that, like, I can just come to terms with and then be 100% okay with for the rest of my life. I think it's something that I need to learn how to come to terms with, and then also learn how to maintain that contentness.
I appreciate your perspective because like I know that like you're not alone. Like there's a lot of people out there like you who like come out of these experiences and maybe not in regards to like the oneness, but like like and like they find out something or they perceive something and I feel like in some cases like ignorance is bliss.
Yeah. And I mean, like, I listen to a lot of, I've been listening to a lot of Alan Watts, lately, because I mean, just one, the man's voice is just, like, fucking it just soothes me. I mean, he could say anything, and I'd be like, "Oh, yeah." But, I mean, also too, like, he had a great way of verbalizing all of these concepts, like, even, like, the Eastern, uh, beliefs, just kind of verbalizing those concepts and making them tangible to, like, Westerners and people who weren't necessarily raised with that concept, um, and it's harder to kind of grasp those ideas, and listening to him definitely helped make things tangible, and also kinda helps me reframe the way I'm thinking of this concept of oneness and infinity, and eternity, and be okay with it. And that's, I don't know. It's just it's weird, because it's like, I know that I'm putting, so I guess after, sorry, let me restart. After that experience, after reading about it, I didn't know it at the time, but I've come to realize that what I experienced was ego death, or maybe a partial ego death. Maybe I didn't have a full ego death, but I did experience a form of ego death, and that feeling of loneliness and, like, boredom, those are ego traits that I'm trying to attach to an egoless being. I'm trying, the feelings of loneliness and whatever, that those are human traits. Just because of the way we're wired, we're social beings, we've evolved to, be social in groups and communities. But that's being human, and there's so much, obviously, more than just being human, and whatever is out there might not even have the capacity to feel loneliness. It might be a completely foreign concept, and that kind of gives me some hope that that's not what, uh, death is going to be, or what moving on from this plane is going to be. Like, I won't once I'm done in this form and I move on permanently to the other side, I won't feel that feeling of loneliness or boredom, because that might not exist there.
It's it's interesting. Like I feel like you're definitely not alone. Like in feeling like this like I haven't done DMT, but I have had a lot of deep experiences with like mushrooms or LSD.
Well, yeah, I think and I'm also doing some reading. I think it's very possible to get to those states. I mean, you don't need DMT to get to those states. You can, I mean, I think people can do it with LSD and with mushrooms. I also think it's possible through, like, meditation. I think you can achieve the states that you can get to, in those with those substances. I think the substances are more so not the catalyst for those experiences, but a tool to get there. I don't think these substances hold the experience themselves. I think they help unlock parts of your brain to have the experience.
I've come to the conclusion like through some of my first mushroom trips, even like I felt like I was one with everything. But I had a more like I guess optimistic. Um, I don't even know if I could say perspective. Yeah, I guess perspective on it. Like I felt comforted knowing that I was like I guess a smaller piece of like the bigger picture.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, it might just be the way that I am viewing it. I could just be totally just viewing it wrong. It's just I am trying to it's not as simple as just not seeing it that way. Like I have to be shown it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Someone on one of the comments on the post said something really cool. They said, like a leaf knows, or a leaf is a part of the tree. The leaf is the tree basically. But it doesn't go around telling all the other leaves that we're all the tree, because the leaves would just think it's crazy. The leaf just operates on itself, knowing that it is part of the tree because it is the tree. And I guess that kind of like made me feel a little better about it too. That concept, or that comment, that way of framing it, because it's like, yeah, like I am still in this form. I'm still an individual person, and I can have a purpose for the greater consciousness or the greater self. I like the one consciousness is the tree, and I am the leaf of that. We are all the leaf of that one consciousness.
Yeah, that's exactly I think what my perspective is on it too. Like, I'm just like we're all our own separate pieces of this bigger picture. But I could definitely see it being like the the perceiving it as like we're all like the same, like we are all this one, like we're all God or however
Yeah.
you perceive it.
Well, that was the thing too. Is it kind of blew the? I feel like the concept of God has been really skewed with like the way religion had evolved, where God became this like authoritative figure that rules over everybody, and we're all here to serve it. Um, and that's the only reason we exist. But I think the concept of God to me now is more so God is everything. Like this is God. My microphone that I'm talking to you with is God. My camera that you see me on is God. Uh, I am God. You are God. Everything is God. My cat right there is God. My water bottle's God. That's what God is. God is everything. And the sense of that we all exist to serve that isn't just some other being that we're like a slave to. That other being is us, and we are serving ourselves.
What other factors do you think contributed to how that experience unfolded for you? Like, do you think I know that was your first DMT trip.
Yeah.
Well, no, my bad. That wasn't your first one. It was like I guess your first
I
like
would say it
your
would be my first like actual like full like my full that would be my first breakthrough dose for sure.
yeah. Yeah, so just like generally what do you think contributed to like I guess your that outcome, that perspective that you came to?
I think I honestly think it's just I unfortunately just given with my mental health and like depression and anxiety, like I'm generally kind of a negative person in the sense that I get frustrated and irritated and annoyed very easily, and I get really down on just the way the world works, and the way the government is and all that. Not to get like political or anything. It just I get really I feel this sense of doom almost, like that we're a lot like humans, and Earth is just kind of a lost cause, and like we've screwed ourselves. And I think that might have that the way that I see this world might have played a role in how I saw the other world, so to speak. I think that if I mean, I not that I think I know that if I was a more positive person, if I was able to see things in a more positive light or accept things differently, that I probably would have been able to accept that concept of eternity and oneness differently. And I think that was kind of an important thing for me to experience, because one of the things I guess I learned or realized I need to work on from that experience is um, to find contentment and happiness in the present moment. I mean, it showed me that concepts like time are illusions. The only thing that exists is the now, because everything is happening now. The past has already happened, therefore it doesn't exist anymore. And the future, well, hasn't happened yet, so it doesn't exist either. The only thing that actually exists is now. And I think what I learned from that is I need to figure out how to be content with the body that I'm in now, the realm that I'm in now, the consciousness that I'm experiencing now, before I can find contentment in any other realm.
Is there anything else you would like to say in regards to that experience specifically?
Yeah. If you're gonna do DMT, be prepared to die. Just accept that you're gonna die. You'll be back, but you're gonna die.